Ahoy, mates. I'm Bob Height, skipper of the Ketch Kinship Channel 8's Nautical News boat. You know, there's a lot of work that goes into getting ready for a boat show. You can see what we've been up to for the last few weeks.
Yeah, up to our elbows in paint.
Let me introduce my shipmate and co-producer of the Nautical News, Lynn Rabren.
Don't forget co-painter, Bob.
Ah, yes, co-painter. Well, like I was saying, there's a lot of work that goes into getting ready for a boat show, especially when you're trying to get an old wooden boat to look as good as those new fiberglass ones.
I think she'll look even better.
Well, I hope so, Lynn. We'll see anyway. And I hope you'll come on down to the docks and see, too.
You know, Bob, we're not the only ones that have been working hard to get ready.
That's true. Every exhibitor that's been in the show has been planning and making preparations for it for months.
And the show promoters have been working at it almost a year.
That's right. Now, I know you folks may be more interested in the boats than the boat show itself, but let us take just a few moments to tell you a little bit about what's involved. First of all, producing a boat show, especially this one, is practically a logistical impossibility. For instance, a few weeks ago, there weren't even any docks here, which means you have to build and install your own, which includes driving pilings to keep them in place.
Have you ever seen a marina built in 2 weeks?
Nope, I didn't even know you could get a permit in 2 weeks. But, voila.
Yeah, and there's plenty of work to be done dockside, too. The big top has to go up, and under it all, the booths for the exhibitor's world of hardware.
Meanwhile, back at the docks, where are the boats, Lynn?
Boats? You want boats? I'll show you boats.
Hey, that's a pretty good trick.
Yeah, it's probably the toughest trick of all.
Lynn's right. You know, without boats, you wouldn't have a boat show. And it's the exhibitors who bring the boats, not to mention all the stuff that goes into these booths. So how do you get the exhibitors to come? Well, for the answer to that question, let's ask the man who has orchestrated this entire extravaganza, the boss of the boat show, Kay Pearson.
Well, this is, a year-round job for us. We start probably about a month after the show is over and continue to work on the show all year round. We talk to national exhibitors at shows all over the country. We attend national meetings with other show managers, and we spend quite a bit of time working on enticing the exhibitor to come here to St. Petersburg and show all the new products, what's new for '79, and that's what it's all about, is to show the consumer what's new and what's here in the boating industry.
People seem to react very well to boat shows. What is it about the atmosphere of this place that's so appealing to everyone?
There's a certain magic, and I've never really been able to put my finger on it. We have an incredible number of people that help us put the show together, a great many of which we couldn't afford to pay, but there's just so much fun and excitement attached to the show that people want to be around and be involved. And of course, it's turned into more of an event, which you can get in the water. You've got the excitement of the water, the boats in the water, the steel band playing, fashion shows going on, and so it becomes a real entertainment medium.
So that's how the boat show happens, and it happens to be one of the best boat shows of its kind in the country. But then, could we expect less from what could well be the boating capital of the country?
Now you're talking, mate. Not only do we have a tremendous concentration of boat owners in the area, but we have an unparalleled concentration of boat builders. And off their ways come some of the most beautiful boats in the world.
Mm-hmm. Tampa Bay is the 8th largest port in the country, and the largest in the state. We also have a huge commercial fishing industry, not to mention a formidable fleet of charter and party fishing boats.
The Bay Area's entire heritage is hinged to the sea.
And in tribute to that heritage, the Bay Area boasts 2 tall ships. The Bounty, a full-rigged replica built from the plans of her famous predecessor and berthed in St. Pete, and the Brig Unicorn, which sails from Tampa bearing best wishes from the Bay Area's communities to their sister cities of the sea around the world. For more on the Unicorn, let's go back to a Nautical News report of about a year ago.
Our maritime heritage. To many of us, it means a lot. It certainly meant a lot to the people who created Mystic Seaport in Mystic, Connecticut, and to those who established the South Street Seaport at the tip of Manhattan, and to the people responsible for Penn's Landing in Philadelphia. But all these places seem to be in the north. Well, there may soon be such a place in the south. Like the others, it has begun with one tall ship, in this case, the Unicorn. You may have seen her tied up in Tampa. She is the flagship of the Unicorn Maritime Institute, an organization founded a year ago this month. It sponsors people who love the sea and who receive much of their inspiration from the bicentennial's Operation Sail.
Us were awed and impressed and thrilled to see Operation Sail and the parade of tall ships in New York. And I think it brought very well to mind the heritage and the traditions of the United States. A lot of people don't realize it, but we're an island, and we have to go to sea. The Institute is in the business of providing a sail training program on board the sail vessel Unicorn for American youth, not only from our community and from the state of Florida, but from the nation as well. And we have many volunteers and people who are members of our various committees and groups and board that all are involved because they feel that this program is of significance in the United States and in particular in our own community.
The Unicorn is yet to carry her first cargo of kids. There's much to be done yet, but not as much as has already been done. Next week, a look at just how formidable a task it can be, getting a tall ship ready for sea. I'm Bob Height on the Nautical News Beat.
Well, lots happened since we filed that report. The crew of the Unicorn got their tall ship ready for sea, and last spring cast off for a summer-long cruise up the East Coast. She visited scores of cities, participating in local maritime festivals and providing hundreds of kids with sail training. And each time the tall ship from Tampa cast off, she left behind some magnificent memories in many young minds. By the way, the Unicorn and her crew arrived back home in the Bay Area this weekend, and next weekend they'll be at Ballast Point in Tampa for the Unicorn Festival. Not only will the ship be featured, but there'll be maritime displays, demonstrations of seamanship skills, and of course lots of sea chanties to be sung. So try to come on by and give the Unicorn and her crew a hearty welcome home.
Hey, the Kinship and her crew will be there too. Bob, you've been bragging about the Unicorn and the Bounty. How about telling the folks about our boat?
Well, she's not as tall, but like the other two, the Kinship's dedicated to preserving and propagating our maritime heritage. And she plays her part by taking us to the scenes of our stories. We've covered sea stories from Marblehead to the Marquesas, and we look forward to going even farther afield in the future. In fact, I'm sure we'll have to, because boating is growing. And as boating grows, the need to know more about it grows. But why is it growing? Well, for the answer to that, let's go back to a Nautical News report we filed 4 years ago.
How do you enjoy a boat? Well, let's count the ways. Here's one.
See, you don't even have to get in a boat to have yourself some fun. You can just drag along behind, hanging on a rope. But isn't skiing difficult? Nope. Oh, so that's not how you'd best wish to spend the day. Well, there's certainly easier methods of getting underway. An outboard motorboat is easy to handle, fast and fun. And if your motor fails you, sailing, anyone? And the places boats can take you, where there's so many things to see and do. To islands off the coast where you can pitch a tent or two. To secluded beaches where the ladies can get a tan. And the gentlemen can go in search of the oyster, mussel, and clam. And of course, the water's where the fish are, good eating flounder, bass, and blue. And if you're licensed to take some pots along, you might catch some lobster, too. And nothing beats evening time at dockside, swapping sea stories by the ton. It's a great way for the entire family to get together and have some fun.
Well, I think boating's an ideal family activity because it can be done, the whole family can do it, and it's something that a family can start out doing early on in the life of the family, so to speak. There's a boat of every size and description for almost any need and almost any income level. Beyond that, the person who needs to fill a competitive urge can fill it with boating. The person who just wants to relax can fill that need. The person who likes to fish can fill that need. The one who wants to camp. There are many, many facets of boating that almost any people can enjoy at almost any time.
Meanwhile, back in the Sound, where I lost my life belt in one ski when I last fell down, and hence good sense dictates that Bosun Bob be homeward bound.
I'm Bob Height,
On the Nautical News Beat.
Hey, you gotta admit, we sure do get around.
Yeah, but I'm glad we don't have to go it alone. While Channel 8 is the only TV station in the country that has a department devoted exclusively to nautical news with regularly scheduled reports, we're not the only source of nautical news. There are a handful of nautical news papers, and in our opinion, one of the very best is Soundings. Next to individual members of the boating public, Soundings is one of our most valuable sources of information. It has correspondents in Washington who keep boaters abreast of the legislation that's liable to affect them, and correspondents across the country, keeping us up to date on what other boaters are doing and the environment in which it's being done. In Florida, two of Soundings' correspondents are a couple, Jim and Joe Grabinski. They get around the state about as much as we do, maybe more. And when they get back home to start putting their part of the paper together, if they've come across something they think the public should know about even before Soundings hits the newsstands, they pass it on to us, especially if the story is of a really pressing matter. Ahoy, mates. In today's edition of the Nautical News, we're going to show you something that is rarely, if ever, seen on commercial TV. We see a lot of risque things these days, but the censors still find that which is behind this door deplorable to the sensibilities of the viewing public. Probably because it is the only appliance that is still more important to the public than the almighty television set. Brace yourselves now, for I am speaking of the toilet. This, of course, is no ordinary toilet, but rather the Nautical News boat's marine head. And if seeing this does offend your sensibilities, I apologize, but this old water closet is what this report is about. If you have a boat and your boat has a head, perhaps you've heard some scuttlebutt going around about a new law going into effect February 1st. And perhaps you've been as uncertain as to what that law is as I was before I went to the source earlier this week.
With regards to the marine sanitation devices, there isn't anything really that an individual has to do by the end of January this year. However, one of the stipulations in the new regulations is that if an individual does have a Type 1 marine sanitation device prior to the end of this month, then he may keep it on an existing vessel so long as it's in a serviceable condition.
By the way, if you should attempt to purchase a Type 1 head prior to February 1st and find they're all back-ordered, the commander says some form of form proving that you've ordered the device will suffice for the time being. A lot of boaters feel that it's unfair that the environmentalists should be picking on us when our contribution to pollution is so minimal compared to the billions of gallons that cities and industries across the country are still pumping into the sea every day. Well, we are still part of the problem. And after all, it's us seafaring folk who've always paved the way for landlubbers anyway. Now, I don't have any editorial comment to make on this subject. However, I think my old friend here has. Excuse me. Couldn't have said it any better myself. I'm Bob Height on the Nautical News seat.
More recently, Soundings had a story on the predicament of Florida's manatee population and the proposed legislation to protect them. We followed through with this report.
Crystal River, the winter home for many of Florida's manatees. Sometimes called sea cows, the manatees come here in search of warmer water. To assist Lynn Rabren, Lou Levine, and me in our search for the manatee was Charlie Talley. That's Charlie at the helm. He runs a dive operation on the river and knows its waters and winter residents well. Charlie said that several manatees had been seen by Banana Island, and when we got there, some divers were already in the water. So we suited up and in we went. The Crystal River is a great dive spot in its own right, but the manatees are what make it unique. The ancient mariners mistook them for mermaids. I guess that's what too many months at sea can do to a man. But in a sense, manatees are beautiful on the inside. They're friendly, even affectionate creatures who've never been known to intentionally hurt a human being. And I doubt if there are many human beings who'd want to hurt them intentionally. But you see the marks on that big fella's back? Scars from a propeller. A manatee often can't get out of the way of a fast-moving powerboat in time, and it seems a lot of boat operators aren't aware of that as they go speeding through manatee habitats. Well, this year, the state of Florida is cracking down on those who show so little regard for these creatures.
We're going to have to do something because we have a lot of people coming to Crystal River to dive. If they know how to do it, if they have proper education, it's fine. Because this is the only place I know of that you can come and play with the manatees, enjoy the manatees right in your own habitat. And they are beautiful creatures, but if we abuse this, then the state will certainly come in and do something about it. It's a terrible thing whenever we just tearing them up. I think this year you're going to see some test cases put out, so I certainly wouldn't want to be one to be caught as a test case.
As he's one of the manatee's greatest mentors, I doubt Charlie Talley has to worry about that. It would be nice if the manatees didn't have to worry either, though. So long, big fella. We'll be back to play again real soon. I'm Bob Height on the Nautical News Beat.
As in any newspaper, there are sometimes human tragedies to report. We alerted Jim and Joe to the case of a young woman who was killed while water skiing at Paso Grill. Until the authorities conclude their investigation of this case, it would be improper to pass judgment on the people involved. But what about the place where it happened and the conditions at the time it occurred? Paso Grill is one of only two direct routes between Boca Ciega Bay and the Gulf of Mexico. May 7th was a sunny Sunday. It was likely there were a lot of boats out on the Gulf that day. The accident happened between 5 and 5:15 p.m., a time when many of those boats were probably heading back in again. The wind was blowing from the southwest at about 10 knots. At the time, the tide was going out. The combination of the wind blowing against the flow of water created a chop, which was compounded by the wakes from the passing boats. Under such conditions, from the bridge of a speeding boat, a head bobbing in the water could be hard to see. So Paso Grill might not have been the most desirable place to ski.
You want to try to find a place that's free from obstacles, that is free from boat traffic, and relatively calm if you're a new skier. Secondly, you want to have a boat that's properly equipped, not overpowered. You want to have a competent boat driver, and you also, of course, want to have proper flotation equipment for the skier, and one for each person that is riding in the boat.
What do you think is the biggest mistake novices make when they're skiing?
Could be recklessness, could be also in your boat driver's capability, can definitely hamper your skiing.
Enough can never be said about safety. It's all the time we have for this week. Next week, a look at why this is one of the most popular water sports in the world. I'm Bob Hyde on the Nautical News Beat.
We really never know what we might be covering next. Sometimes we do stories when we're not supposed to be doing anything. Not too long ago, Bob and another member of the Nautical News crew, Bob South, took off for what was supposed to be a couple of days of R&R in a canoe. Of course, they took their cameras.
It's not hard to imagine how the Peace River came by its name, or why it attracts so many canoeists, including the crew of the Nautical News canoe. But don't worry, it doesn't attract too many people. In fact, as Bob South and I wound our way downstream, we could more easily imagine ourselves in a tributary of the Amazon than a river in mid-Florida. Usually, the only hint of humanity other than ourselves was the distant sound of truck traffic on Highway 17. Occasionally during the course of our trip, we did pass some other people. A couple of swingers proved you don't need a canoe and a paddle to enjoy the peace. There's a lot to be said for sunset on the river. It's beautiful, and it also means it's time to stop for the night and make camp. And while canoeing with the current, as we were, isn't too demanding, the rest is still welcome, and so is the warmth of the campfire. It helps to dry out you and your canoe. And this is the time to reflect on the day just done and the marvelous miles ahead that tomorrow holds. The Peace is only one of dozens of beautiful rivers in our state that offer those of us who love the water a delightfully different kind of boating experience. So long, of course, as we practice it safely. Next week, some paddling pointers from our guide on the Peace River trip, John Leverous. I'm Bob Hyde on the Nautical News Beat.
And that was a nice weekend. We got a pretty good report out of it, too. Of course, most of the nautical news is good news. Sometimes it even gives us something to sing about.
Out in Reddington, protruding from the beach, built of planks and pilings, into the sea they reach, into the sea they reach.
Well, of course I enjoy being around the people. They're a happy bunch of people, you know. Always up for it when they're out here fishing, you know.
How do you like pier fishing as opposed to other types of fishing?
Well, one thing about it, you don't have to worry about being knocked off anything. You just got your spot and that's it. You stay where you are and nobody pushes you out of there.
We used to use a safety pin on a piece of wood.
You've been a pier fisher person for a long time.
Yeah.
So you too are an advocate of pier fishing.
Definitely. I have a cousin that used to have a 22-foot boat, and I'd go out with him. I wouldn't get anything but pinfish and sea bass. Off of this pier, I have taken numerous mackerel. I got 19 day before yesterday, 3 yesterday. They're not biting today.
What accoutrements do you need?
Luck.
Luck?
That's the only thing I can say is luck.
People from lots of places, it's a place where the people can go. Cast a line into the water, let the day slip by slow, let the day slip by slow. Old folks' faces turn toward the sea, thoughts of days gone by. But this day's as good as any, and this night there'll be a fish fry, this night there'll be a fish fry. Little boy on daddy's shoulder, his first time on a pier. It's a day he'll never forget, 'cause he caught his first fish here, caught his first fish here.
Looks like you have some nice fillets from this one.
Very good, very good.
And you, sir, how are you enjoying your day at the pier? Oh, don't ask.
So if you're ever down at Reddington Beach, the piers you have to see, they're part of what makes living great here in 8 Country, here in 8 Country.
Jimmy Buffett you're not, but you'll have to do. You're all I've got. You know, next to being on the water, we like being under it. And if you'll go check out the Nautical News boats, you'll see we're pretty well equipped in that area, too.
Ahoy, mates. You know, what with the way the weather's been this past week, the season is most assuredly upon us. And so we thought it was time to do another dive story. This time of year we have a lot of Yankee divers coming down from up north, and they're going to be experiencing quite a few things they're probably unaccustomed to, such as the sinkhole. So today we're going to do a sinkhole dive and learn a lot about it, hopefully. Our guide will be Lou Levine of the Tackle Shack here in Pinellas Park. Hey, Lou, let's go diving.
Tell me about this sinkhole dive. What's it like?
Well, it's probably different than anything you've ever dove before, Bob. It's one of Florida's natural phenomenons. It's part of the aquifer system.
Aquifer system?
Yeah, there's underground rivers in the whole state here, and this is somewhere along years past the top fell in and it formed a sinkhole. Mm-hmm. That's what caused a sinkhole. This one's been there for many, many years, and it's very clear. At least it has been every time I've been in there. And it's going to be altogether different than anything you've ever dove. We'll probably be diving 50, 60 feet today. I'll show you guys a little bit about what the walls look like and how clear it is, and maybe some of the fossils in the walls, and maybe some of the agatized coral.
Wow.
Or chert, just a stage before agatized coral that we'll find in the walls.
Dynamite.
But it's going to be a different, something different you've ever done, because I know you've been diving saltwater pretty heavy.
Yeah. Usually the stuff I can't see my hand in front of my face.
What do you guys think of that?
Oh, look.
Beautiful.
That was fantastic.
Isn't that something? You
Yeah.
know how
Tough to it.
And you really have to be very super cautious. You got to keep your eye on that depth gauge, keep your buoyancy right. You sure get in a lot of trouble if you don't, because you're too deep before you know it.
Yeah. What is the biggest mistake people usually make?
Oh, there's a lot of mistakes I guess we all make, but I think lack of training would be the biggest problem. Most people have. They're not properly qualified to dive in something like this.
I tell you, we sure do appreciate you taking us down.
Oh man, I'm glad to do it. I just want to let you people see what something like natural fire attraction is.
Yeah, it was dynamite. Thank you. Well, fellas, let's go get something to eat.
Okay.
Well, it's not often you'll find a hard news story underwater. In the past, we've had one that won't quit. I'm talking about the wreck of the Gunsmoke, a shrimper that was involved in a marijuana smuggling operation that resulted in the cold-blooded killings of 4 innocent people. We dove on the wreck during a recent salvage attempt. It failed, but the authorities still want to get the Gunsmoke up so that they can look for evidence in a more thorough fashion than divers can. You can be sure when the next attempt to raise her is made, the kinship will be at anchor alongside the salvage vessel, and Lynn, Lou, and I will be down below filming the action. Sometimes we use our underwater gear half in and half out of the water.
Ahoy, mates. The big story in the Nautical News Beat this week, the Prindle Nationals. They began yesterday and will run through tomorrow. But what's a Prindle, you say? Well, this is a Prindle. And back here are some Prindle people. And out there is some Prindle action.
Some people say watching sailboats race is like watching the grass grow. I'm Bob Height on the Nautical News Beat.
Cypress Gardens to see some of the best water skiing in the world. And it ain't me! Whoa.
No, I'm what you'd call an average water skier. It's not hard to spot us. We fall down a lot. Once the professionals at Cypress Gardens get up, though, they usually stay there. And they don't just hang on the end of the tow rope. They do things. Some of them can do things that nobody else in the world can do on water skis. And when they do it 4 times a day, you know it's not luck. While it may seem hard to believe, there was a time when none of these people knew how to ski. To get like this, it just took years of practice and a job application.
I started out as a tournament skier, heard about Cypress Gardens from my fellow skiers, and decided I would send an application in. And they accepted me within 6 months, and I came down and began skiing.
What would you suggest for somebody getting into this sport?
I would suggest that they have a good boat driver, that they have a good trainer just to start out with, and also to keep their arms straight, and not to try to stand up on your skis right away. That seems to be the biggest problem among beginning skiers.
If you've never attempted to water ski because you thought it was too difficult, you should try. It's not too hard to get up. It just takes a lot of practice to get this high up.
Water skiing! Certainly one of the more exciting ways to enjoy the water. I'm Bob Hyde of the Nautical News Beat at Cypress Gardens.
The sea. It's an alien environment for man, and no matter how much training or experience he might have, man sometimes messes up, or Mother Nature just gets the better of him in his boat. I don't know about you folks, but we wouldn't be so quick to cast off if we didn't know there was somebody else who might be able to bail us out if we got into trouble. So we'd like to conclude this production with a report we put on this past Thanksgiving, a tribute to every mariner's fairy godmother, the U.S. Coast Guard.
It's sunrise at the U.S. Coast Guard Air Station, St. Petersburg, and all personnel are assembled for inspection. The commanding officer is Captain Raymond Copen. He holds formal inspections infrequently, and then he keeps them short. For in a sense, unlike other branches of the service, the Coast Guard is constantly at war. Its mission, to protect the lives and property of American mariners, and to keep our coastlines secure from smugglers of contraband and others engaged in illegal activities within our territorial waters. It's a mission that never ends, a war that's never won. And it won't be won until the last storm has passed, the last accident has occurred, the last careless captain has cast off, and the last smuggler has been captured. Then maybe these men can know a moment of idleness. Meanwhile, the Coast Guard's kind of combat continues. Oftentimes first on the scene is a unit of the Coast Guard Air Wing. Flight crews travel far afield from their base in St. Petersburg. This helicopter could be responding to a Mayday in the Bahamas. This Hercules could be carrying electronic components urgently needed by a LORAN station in Africa. Routine missions are few and far between, and those that begin as routine often don't end that way. At any moment, a flight might be diverted, perhaps to pluck an injured man from the deck of a freighter, perhaps to parachute a pump to a sinking boat. So far, this flight is a routine one. In fact, it's one that might even be fun. Our destination, the Coast Guard installation on Dry Tortugas. Our mission en route, to check out every blimp on the radar screen that might be a boat. The only way to distinguish a legal vessel from a foreign fishing vessel violating our 200-mile limit, or a smuggler, is by getting down close and eyeballing it.